Ed was proving his usefulness, pulling heavy trains over the mountains. Where it used to take 2 or even 3 engines, Ed could do the work alone. He'd start on the west side of the mountains, and huff and puff and pull his cars to a yard on the east side, where other engines could take them. One day, a new engine arrived at the east yard. His name was David, and he looked just like Ed, except he had 2 sets of 6 wheels instead of 8. He couldn't pull trains as long as Ed's over the mountains, but anywhere else he was the strongest of them all. When Ed arrived, he was surprised to find his look-alike waiting for him. They quickly became good friends, and David's fireman remarked, "I think you two could be brothers." "Do you really think so?" "Well, we do look alike," said Ed. "Then brothers it is." They talked for some time, but soon enough Ed had to leave to collect his next train. David took over his last train for the rest of its journey. He backed down and waited while the coupling was secured. He heard some workmen talking nearby. "I don't get it," one said. "Get what?" asked the other. "I don't get why they built engines like that one," he pointed to David, "and not more like Ed." "Well, Ed is built to work on the mountains. Why send him to do work that other engines can do themselves?" "They're no use," the first workman said. "It's a waste of money, I say." This made David start to wonder, does everyone think Ed is better than me? When he saw Ed again, he pretended all was well, but he felt more and more worried that he wasn't as good as his brother. A train had been put together for Ed to take west. David got an idea. "If I were to take that train over the mountains instead of Ed, everyone would see that I'm just as useful as him." He quickly backed down onto the freight cars. David," his engineer said uncertainly, "are you sure this train is yours?" Of course it is. I'm ready to go." When the signal dropped, David was ready. The train was heavier than any he'd taken before. His wheels slipped, his pistons strained. But at last, pulling his hardest, he slowly chugged out of the yard. "Look, David's taking that train! Just you watch, he'll surprise us yet." Out on the main line, the heavy train kept David from going very fast. His wheels ached with the effort. His engineer began to feel worried about him. "Are you all right, David?" he asked. Yes, I'm fine." He barely had the breath to answer. He started to climb the mountains, and then the work became harder than ever. Smoke billowed from his chimney as he felt his wheels turning slower and slower. He tried his best, but he finally ground to a halt. His engineer got out to examine him and saw how exhausted he was. He quickly pieced together what had happened. He shook his head, disappointed. "This is what you get for trying to show off," he scolded. "I'll go call for help." David felt ashamed. Ed soon came to take the train away, and David slunk sadly home. When he arrived, the first workman saw him and sighed. "So much for surprising us. I told you they weren't any good." David didn't say anything. Over the next few days, whenever Ed came through, David would hide on a siding and say nothing. Ed could tell his brother was miserable. He wanted to help, but he didn't know how.